What's up, everybody? Welcome to Diversity in Digital, our fireside chat presented by Artscape Weston. So excited to have a conversation today with Danica S. Nelson, marketing top 30 under 30, senior product marketing manager at Shopify, and industry liaison at Humber College. What's up, Danica? I'm so happy to have you today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and talk it out with you for the next little while.
For real. So, why don't you just start us off, right? Like, tell people a little bit more about yourself, your career journey, and what got you to this point today.
Absolutely. So as you kind of said in my intro, I am currently a senior product marketing manager at Shopify, a relatively new role. I've only been here for about 5 months now. Prior to that, I was working at TELUS, which for anyone who doesn't know is one of Canada's big telecommunications companies. I was there for 12 years. So literally since I was 17 years old, I was there and kind of just slowly climbed the corporate ladder. My story there is I actually started in stores. I was, selling phones to make that commission to put myself through university. And then eventually in my last semester of school, I had the opportunity to intern for the marketing communications team. And then I climbed the ladder up there after that. So that was an awesome journey. And also currently I am a industry liaison / part-time educator at Humber College, which you mentioned, for the advertising, marketing, and communications program. And finally, I am also a advisory board member at Strategy Magazine for their diversity, equity, and inclusion board.
Nice. So definitely want to talk about the work that you're doing. And you mentioned Humber. And, the Tech Effect, one of our biggest missions is mentorship and career support. So what are some of the top skills in the marketing and advertising space that you would recommend to anybody starting off? How do they break through? What are the skills they should have, both technical and transferable?
Yeah, so I think it depends on, what type of marketing this aspiring marketer or advertiser wants to get into. Personally, for me, I think it's good to know a little bit of everything, because when you are kind of more of a generalist and you kind of understand better how to talk to your teams, you're a better team player. So things that I definitely look for and that I think are important are data analytics. You really want to be able to understand how to read those results that are coming in, like what is driving your sales, what is driving people to maybe not convert. I would also say strategy. A lot of people, I find, they focus on marketing tactics. They get really excited about a big campaign or a new release, and they want to do, I'm going to do this social media campaign and I want to do, this billboard, but they don't really focus on the strategy and what's the overall objective and kind of how you're driving people through that marketing funnel. So I would say strategy is really important as well. And also just basic design skills. As marketers, we're going to be presenting our work, we're going to be building decks and things like that. So even if you know how to, hold down like Canva or Photoshop or something, that's definitely really important as well.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so those are three really good areas, very interesting. Definitely support those. And what about on the transferable skills? Some of more of the softer skills.
Yeah, I think public speaking is very important. You don't have to be, the best speaker in the world, and you don't need to, go to talks and conferences, but to be able to present your work in front of an audience is really important, because as a marketer, you're likely going to have to do that, whether it's externally or it's internally inside of your organization. Also, being a good storyteller, being able to tell that product or whatever you're marketing, the narrative of that is really important, because that's how you're going to connect with your audience. And then just learning to self-advocate for yourself as you are, building your career and you are having quarterly or yearly reviews. You have to make sure that you're able to say what your worth is and, kind of like say what you deserve in terms of if it's a raise, if it's a new project and things like that.
Yeah, that's super important, and that's something to work on and develop. And you touched on an interesting point, and I want to go to the next question, which is involving mentorship, right? So I know for me, when going through the agency space and just going through my career, a lot of these things I didn't know at the time. And of course, I had to grow into them and learn them. But how important is it to have somebody that can mentor you, that can teach you some of these things or guide you with some of the things you should be looking at?
I think it's so important. Why waste your own time and energy and potentially money learning hard lessons if you can learn them from someone else who's already kind of been there and done that? I think it's so important to seek out mentors who can kind of help guide you through your career and that process. I think a lot of people focus on getting mentorships where they meet with someone on a regular basis, but I also think it's important to realize that there's such a thing as indirect mentorships as well.
Right.
Like for me, in my mind, I have some mentors that don't know that they're my mentors. I've actually never had discussions with them before, but as I follow them on like all of their social media and their website and things that they've put out into the world, it's really helped guide me through my career as well, because they kind of helped share some of their trials and tribulations and, kind of helped me to avoid making some of the same mistakes that they did, or double down on the things that have really helped guide them throughout their career.
Right. Okay, cool. And then what about direct mentors? Do you have any suggestions of like, you do know somebody, you have somebody that maybe coached you before, or somebody that, you kind of see making moves in the area where you're interested in? How do you approach that mentor? How do you make that connection?
Yeah, I think it's important when you are approaching a potential mentor to not structure your ask as, it's all about you. You have to try to structure it as like a mutually beneficial relationship. So whatever you could offer them as well, maybe you're really good at something and you see that they're looking to learn a skill, structure your ask in a way where it's like, please help me help you, and we can kind of help each other grow and build together. Also, I think a lot of people are afraid to ask for mentors. People tend to, wait until like a professional in a marketing industry actually joins a formal mentorship program or something like that to be able to seek that out. But a lot of people are actually really open to, mentoring people on a regular basis through simple LinkedIn messages and emails. I think it's important to make sure that you do your research on those people to make it seem like, okay, like you actually seeked me out, like I feel special.
Mm-hmm.
And people also like talking about themselves and they're willing to guide you. But yeah, I would really encourage people to not be afraid to reach out, because a lot of people are really willing to help.
Yeah, that's that's an interesting point. And also when you mentioned research, and then you talked about strategy earlier, those two tie hand in hand, because the more research you do on a person, or before you get into a situation, the more it equips you and educates you for that conversation regardless. So whether or not that becomes your mentor or not, you still learn a lot in the process.
Exactly. And I notice also a lot of people focus on mentorship, but now I notice the conversation is shifting to sponsorship, where it's like, it's the person who's going to, share their trials and tribulations with you, but they're also going to throw your name in the hat when someone is looking to hire someone, when someone's looking for referrals, someone who will kind of continue to advocate for you throughout your career. That's an important thing to focus on as well.
Very interesting. Okay, so a big part of our audience today is going to be creatives. So if you think about creative entrepreneurship, how do you, as a creative entrepreneur, you want to start your own thing, you want to get your ideas and products out there. Where should you spend a lot of your time in terms of marketing, and where should you spend your money to get yourself going?
Yeah, I would say one of the most important things when you're building either a personal brand or your company is to focus on your story and your narrative. Chances are a lot of people are going to be offering the same thing that you offer, whether it's your product or they have, a similar skill set as you. But people don't focus on their unique story and kind of what makes them different. And people are looking for connection. People are looking to understand what makes you different. If you're comfortable sharing, like, what have you been through? Why should I invest in you? Or why should I pay attention to you as opposed to someone else? So I would highly recommend, before you spend, all of this money on your website and your graphic design and all of these other fancy things, focus on your story and how you're presenting yourself or your product to the world.
Yeah, very good advice. And when you get to that story, and I feel like this is something that we all encounter. How do you encourage yourself to share? How do you encourage yourself to put yourself out there? One of the things a lot of people are reserved about is sharing their story. So they do have a story. They either dismiss it, or they're just like, reserved in terms of, I don't know what people are going to think. They don't want to be judged. So how do you put yourself out there? What suggestions do you have to do that?
Yeah, I completely understand that some people might be more reluctant to putting all of their business out there,
Mhm.
so to say. And even myself, actually, I went through 5 years between 2014 to 2019 of me completely deleting my social media because I just didn't know how to present myself to the world. And it just gave me so much anxiety. I felt like I was comparing myself to others. So I kind of built a strategy for myself where it's like, you know what? This is who I am. And like, I am happy with myself. I accept myself and I'm ready to put my full, authentic, and transparent self out there. And I find the more transparent I am with my audience, the more that they pay attention to me, the higher my engagement is. Things just kind of work out better for me. So if people are willing to be open and honest and authentic, I actually feel that they'll have a really good, some really good feedback and some really good engagement as well.
That's amazing. Okay, so I wanted to talk quickly about that because you've done some work in that area previously. So do you want to talk about some of your history in that area, like the work that you did um, through your corporate side?
Sure. Are you talking about like personal branding?
Yeah.
Yeah. So really for the past really only the since 2019, because like I said, I kind of went on this hiatus. I really spent a lot of time thinking about how I want people to perceive me. And I kind of consider my personal brand as, I'm the director of my film. Like I'm the director of my story. And how am I marketing that? How am I showing people who I am? How am I telling people who I am? And, that might impact the way that they interact with me. It might impact the way that I'm offered opportunities or referrals. And the more I put myself out there, the more people are willing to engage with me. I also find that people really like when I share my L's or like my losses
Yeah,
with them.
right.
Because a lot of social media, people tend to focus on the highlights and all of like the butterflies and rainbows. But if we're keeping it 100, that's not how life is. Life is not always butterflies and rainbows. So I find the more that I share some of my challenges and the behind the scenes footage with people, they resonate with me more, and it also encourages them to want to put themselves out there more authentically.
Yeah, that's so true. And I always think about in terms of like mentorship and sharing that, although you've gone through those situations, somebody else might be going through them for the first time. So sharing how you went through it and sharing that it's possible to overcome it just helps them to take that next step or have that excitement. I want to talk about a little bit about staying in touch with your customers, right? As a freelancer, as a creative entrepreneur, but also just relationship building in general. How important is it to stay in touch with key people that you know, uh, whether it's somebody that you may be asking for something in the future or somebody that helped you in the past?
It's so important. It's so important to continue to feed those relationships and don't only reach out to people when you want something because that reputation will follow you and that's not what you want. They say your network is your net worth, and I do truly believe in that. I've found that social media, following all of like my networks, whether they're professional or kind of more personal, following people on social media, continuously engaging with their content. If they share a new business or a new idea that they're working on, just commenting on it and engaging with it kind of helps keep people top of mind. I would also really recommend for people, for example, if you meet someone through a conference on LinkedIn or something, and you have the opportunity to speak with them, if you come across an article that reminds you of them or something that's out there that might interest them, don't hesitate to send that to them as well, because it kind of reminds them that you exist, first of all. It puts them back on your radar, and it kind of keeps the conversation going. You never want to just reach out to someone for the first time in 3 years and ask for a referral or something, because it's not a good look,
Right.
in my
No,
opinion.
yeah. That's good. That's good. Any other tips to stay in touch or just like networking in general, to put yourself out there as a brand and attract opportunities?
Yeah, I would say informational interviews are very slept on and also super, super important, especially for, people who are entering the marketing industry and advertising industry. I find people are afraid to reach out to people maybe on like LinkedIn or through email. And you don't have to be. And I think those informational interviews, especially for those early stage advertisers and marketers, are really important because it allows you to ask people questions, ask them what they like about the role, what they don't like about the role, and it might help people better find out and determine where in the marketing and advertising industry they want to land.
Right.
So it's a matter of, messaging someone on LinkedIn and saying, hey, I did some research on you. I saw you here. Would you be willing to chat for 15, 20 minutes just to tell me what it's like in your world? And that can really help bring some perspective throughout their career and where they want to land.
Interesting, very interesting. And then I want to talk about too, just like when you're starting out and you're reaching out to different people on LinkedIn, how do you reach out to them? What are some of your secrets there?
When people reach out to me, especially like a cold reach out, I've never heard of them before, I like to know that they've done their research on me. I like to know that they're not just saying, hey, what do you do? Like things like that. Like when I have a fully filled out LinkedIn profile, like that actually upsets me a little bit. So I think making sure that you reference someone's history, maybe talk about something specific that they did that interests you, include that in the reach out. I think that's going to be more impactful than something completely cold and kind of just looks like you may have like copied and pasted to a million people in the industry. Right. I think that's super important.
Okay, cool. All right. And I want to talk a little bit about gaining experience. Because one of the biggest things that we hear from students and from people transitioning into the digital space is that I have theory, but I don't have like experience. I haven't put it into practice. And, I need experience to get a job, but I need a job to get experience. So what are some ways that, people can get some hands-on experience and get themselves noticed for the work while they're like seeking opportunities or just starting out in their career?
Yeah, I hear this a lot with my mentees as well. And my advice to them is always just do something. You don't necessarily need to wait to be hired by a company to actually, do the work that you want to be doing in your career. So whether you make like a fake product, something to market, a mock product, use some school projects, things like that, just show me what you're capable of doing. I'm much more likely to hire someone where I can visually see their work and see what they're capable of versus them, listing it out on a resume or in a cover letter. You don't need to wait for someone to hire you for something for you to start doing the work. Even if it's on your own personal projects, if it's helping out a friend, something like that, do it, put it together, put it in a portfolio, and make sure you make that portfolio easily accessible. That's something that I find people, they'll have a website, but they won't really share it anywhere. Make sure the portfolio is easily accessible, put it on the top of your LinkedIn profile, and share it with the world to show people what you're capable of.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so like switching a little bit now to what are your thoughts and advice when it comes to companies sharing their commitment to diversity and inclusion? And maybe even before we go into that, maybe share some of the stories of like projects that you worked in or some of the work that you've done, whether that's directly through your corporate roles or through your passion side, where you showcase some of your work and put yourself out there.
Absolutely. I'll start by sharing how I kind of got in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. So early in my marketing career, I'm like early 20s, fresh out of school. I'm really happy that I got this marketing communications internship that turned into an entry-level role. But I quickly realized when looking around rooms that I was the only person that looked like me in that room. And it's something you notice. You automatically notice a lack of representation of people who look like you in certain spaces. And it bothered me. It caused me to have a lot of imposter syndrome. It made me wonder, should I be in this room? Did I make the right choice to be in this industry? Right. And as I kind of started digging deeper into that, that's when I got involved in the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council in my last job to really try to start understanding, well, first of all, why is it this way? What can we do to kind of fix this lack of representation? And how can we just kind of make these spaces more equitable? So that's when I started kind of in 2016, 2017, getting in this space. And since then, I think my main impact to the industry has just been very candidly sharing that it's really tough for us to believe that we can succeed in spaces when we don't see people who look like us. And really speaking about that lack of representation and how it kind of messes with you mentally, emotionally, physically, and kind of that emotional tax you deal with when you look around and you don't see people who look like you.
Right.
So as I mentioned, I was kind of on that council in my last role for several years. We worked on, doing some DEI training, having people learn to spot their unconscious biases and how they can correct that. As I mentioned earlier, I'm on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Advisory Board for Strategy Magazine. And I'm really proud of that because Strategy Magazine is kind of Canada's leading advertising and marketing magazine, which really takes a broader look at the industry as a whole. So I feel like I'm having some direct impact there with, how can we change this? How can we shift what's happening and make it better for, people who are just entering the advertising and marketing industry, for like the very few Black, Indigenous, people of color leaders who are at, the top of these, the top of the levels in these roles, because as we know, they're very few, and really just digging deeper into that and being transparent with it.
And what are some things that agencies and businesses can do right away to attract diverse talent? And let's start there.
Yeah, we can start by paying people what they're worth. Being very transparent, in my opinion, being transparent in job postings with, the going rate for roles, so people know what they're signing up for, and, making sure that they're being paid fairly. I think that's super important. It's also important to not be performative with your diversity, equity, and inclusion work. As we know, over the past year or so, a lot of these brands, you can kind of spot the performative ones because they really only come out with showing that they are allies in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space, or with Black, or allies to Black, Indigenous, and people of color when it's time to post a Black square, or when it's time to, post a square or something on Black History Month. So I think that companies who are actually genuinely committed into shifting their diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts to make for a better future is important. And what comes with that is actually spending money on these efforts. It's not hiring a couple volunteers, which are people who have real full-time jobs, working on the side of their desks to try to shift an entire company culture. That's not possible. It's not realistic. So it's putting money behind it. It's making sure that, the leaders, the people higher up, are actually invested in it and supporting the people who are doing the work, and things like that, I think, is how we're going to really shift the culture.
Very interesting. And I wanted to go into finding the talent. And you talked about the resume, right? And when you said resume, I saw a study the other day that said the resume is dead. And then there's a lot of different people, doing TikToks for their resume or doing other creative ways to get noticed. But to me, it all comes down to non-traditional talent seeking, right? So what are some areas, or where can diverse talent be found aside from your traditional university?
That's interesting that you read something that resumes are dead, because I believe it. I'm seeing it more and more every day. I've seen some really great examples on Twitter, for example, of people just posting like mock-ups. Maybe it's like a fake marketing campaign for a company they want to work for, making creative videos or playlists and portfolios. I find, like you said, it's really using social media, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Clubhouse, to put yourself out there and to network, to really get into the spaces that you need to be. I think most people don't realize, I think it's more than 70% of roles are actually not posted on these job posting sites that you see. A lot of these roles are filled through networking or things like that, and referrals. So, make sure that your personal brand is on point. Invest in having, a personal website if you can afford it, a portfolio that's easily accessible. Even though resumes are kind of dying, I still highly recommend that people fully fill out their LinkedIn profiles as well, because chances are, once someone, finds you on TikTok or they're interested in you, they're probably going to go to your LinkedIn to see all the work that you've done and kind of see examples of it. It blows my mind how much people, especially students, underestimate the power of LinkedIn. They're like, oh, a lot of them say people don't really use it, people don't pay attention. But to me, it's a missed opportunity, because what if people are paying attention? You don't want to miss that.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a powerful tool. And overall, I think it's just like what you said, the variations of how you can reach people in different platforms of how to put yourself out there and attract opportunities. But definitely with the resume concept and the transformation and the digital acceleration with how companies are changing and jobs are changing and shifting, the actual resume process takes time, right? You got to go through them all. You got to interview. So going through to these social platforms, almost cutting out some of the steps and then getting that direct contact one-on-one. So very interesting. Talk about a little bit about your mentorship work. What do you teach your students? What are some of the things that you work on them with, work with them on, and things like that?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I'm an industry liaison, which is basically like a half like mentor, half educator at Humber College. And I also do just some freelance mentorship as well, specifically for Black, Indigenous, and people of color students looking to enter the industry. And a lot of it is really just hearing out what they're scared of and working on how we can, improve confidence, for example. I find, especially in the world that we're living in now, people are not used to talking on screens and, not meeting people in real life. So working on like presentation skills, how you can make your video look good, that's super important. But also really emphasizing the importance of having visual examples of your work that are easily accessible. I know I keep saying that because it's something that I just see over and over again. People have them buried somewhere and people can't find it. If I don't know what you're capable of, it's going to be difficult for me to reach out to you and hire you, right? So yeah, focusing on that. And then also just focusing on how you are communicating your value. If you do have experience, for example, rather than saying, when you're interviewing with someone, rather than saying, yeah, when I worked on this campaign or when I worked on this brand, I got them 100 followers. Rather than saying that, I would say, focus on your quantifiable metrics. So by executing this social media campaign, I was able to gain 100 followers, which is 38% month over month. Really focusing on those quantifiable metrics and on the value that you added to past roles and past experiences. So it can kind of give me an idea of what you would be capable of if you were to join, my organization or a future job that you're applying for.
Right. Keys. Voila. Very good information. Kind of wrapping up, I wanted to talk about two last questions. What are some marketing tools, right? So I know you mentioned Canva earlier, but what are some marketing tools that you're using now, you're recommending, and just in terms of your overall experience?
Yeah, Canva, I feel like is just like the key in the industry right now, even for people who aren't so great at design. Also, I would recommend for people who are looking to build their brands on social media, whether it's their personal brand or their business, focus on some type of like social media scheduling tool. So things like Later, Hootsuite, so you can schedule and batch your content in advance to put it out to the world without having to do things individually. I've also seen a big rise in email newsletters. So that's kind of another way that you can continuously communicate with your audience, whether you have an email newsletter on something like Substack or Hootsuite, very just kind of lo-fi, low-tech solutions that allow you to get information out to people who follow you, so you can kind of say what's on your mind and share your expertise.
So Danica, thank you so much for your time today and your energy. Definitely look forward to continuing the conversation. And before you could go, if you could give a shout out to our partners, Artscape Weston, and everybody at the Upstart program, and the Tech Effect, of course, appreciate that.
Absolutely. Shout out to Tech Effect in partnership with Artscape Weston and the Upstart program. This is amazing. I think it's definitely going to help folks navigate their careers and will be beneficial to them. So thank you to y'all for putting this together. And you can follow me at Danica S. Nelson on all of my socials, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and then my website is watchdanicawork.com.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks. Great talking to you, Danica. We'll talk soon.
You as well. Thank you.